So the following series of gags serve as mini battles and jokes. Remember, these are all to make us laugh. In this war between the two characters. They include Alec slamming Presto's hand in a drawer, pulling all the magic things out of his sleeve, and then Presto literally running at Alec, and then Alec executes a maneuver so that Presto ends up pulling off his own pants. And I will admit, I tried to describe that in a variety of different ways, and it's impossible, so just go watch it if you are confused. But just like the kind of butt gag in Lifted and the underwear joke, it's just kind of a small moment of crude humor to get in a quick laugh in between the more elaborately staged gags. And then after this, the attacks on Presto will involve larger props and require more shots and setup. So the first of these is an elaborate ladder gag. And for Presto, the pants joke was kind of the last straw. And now his exclusive goal is to take revenge on Alec. He does not care about the show anymore. And as he starts towards Alec, Alec's quick response is to look towards a ladder at the side of the stage, assess how long it is, and then drop it into the purple hat so it comes out of the black hat into Presto's crotch. Again, very elaborately constructed, crude gags. So while this first use of the ladder is a fairly typical joke, the filmmakers take advantage of the ladder's unique potential after Presto recovers. So as Presto sits there on top of the ladder in pain, he gets an idea, which kind of is signaled by a demonic smile, much like the snowman in Knick Knack. He gets off the ladder and then pushes it back into the black hat like he's loading kind of a spring-loaded gun. So he pushes it back in, and then based off of the physics established so far, as soon as he releases the ladder, it should launch itself back out of the hat. So kind of boom, boom. So the plan, however, we'll talk about what actually happens in a second, but it should be noted that this plan took forethought and cruel intentions. Like, this was not in reaction to anything. This is him purely acting out of anger and malice. And so, therefore, exists in contrast to Alec's more reactionary self-defense methods. It plays out, however, like the egg gag, because Presto aims his black hat at the rabbit, expecting it to launch out at Alec. And so Alec responds naturally by hopping out of the way. And so the ladder instead launches out of the purple hat and launches into a door instead of into Alec. And because of that, it springs it backwards. And this reversal sends Presto flying across the stage with his chain rapidly hitting each rung of the ladder. So incredibly painful, but actually Presto's own fault. And the only thing that Alec really did was step out of the way. So the ladder gets one more use after this, because in his anger, Presto breaks up the ladder into pieces and then uses one of those pieces to smash out the carrot he has now reproduced out of the blue. So remember, he turned the carrot into a flower. Well, now he brought the carrot back just to smash it into pieces. And so it's a tantrum akin to the one in Lifted. It's really childish, really petty. But the thing about the tantrum in Lifted is that was just out of frustration. It was not taking his anger out on another being, which is what Presto is doing here. And there's no finesse to this moment. There's no magic. It's pure aggressive fury. And it's also, if you remember, Alec's worst nightmare. All he wants in this world is this carrot. It is what he loves, and he's witnessing it get smashed into smithereens. And so, once again, we get something to inspire Alec's retribution, so that when the next gag, which is quite cruel, is justified. So when Presto sticks his hand back into the hat, Alec quickly points the purple hat at the electrical board so that Presto's fingers end up sticking into a socket, and electrocuting Presto. Remember, it's the cartoon. So it is an escalation without much foresight, as opposed to Presto's ladder gag. And also, like I said, in response to a grievous offense. So all these, again, are used to keep Alec from seeming like a villain. He is cruel, but he does have reason to be. So this moment gives the filmmakers a chance to have a brief break in the Presto-Alec narrative. As you can see, it's a long series of gags. They're incredibly funny and fun to watch, but this gives it a moment for a break, where we get a joke when the camera cuts to the orchestra, whose job up to this point has been kind of providing flourishes and drum rolls to punctuate all of Presto's and Alec's stunts. I didn't end up going into the music much on this piece, but it's really cool, it's really well done, and it's worth going and checking out Looney Tunes scores and comparing the two. It's kind of a world of analysis I did not jump into, but definitely could have. There's a lot to study there. So we cut to the orchestra. They've been providing these flourishes to all the movements to kind of in place of anything verbal. But this time, two of the men look up to see Presto, who's being electrocuted, and they see him stomping his foot because of the spasms. And so remember the naivete of the audience, who've just assumed that these are all tricks. These orchestra guys have the same reaction. And so they take it as an instruction as opposed to a call for help. And so they think he needs something to dance to, because that's what it looks like he's doing. So they replace their kind of more traditional orchestra instruments and break out a washing board and a banjo. And so there's obvious comedy in them misinterpreting Presto's suffering, but it's also a joke about the music, because they show that these magicians have infinite abilities and instruments. And so we've accepted all the music as flourishes so far without thinking about its source. And this cut also gives it a source. And now this source is kind of immediately switching genres and songs in order to make us laugh. And it's amusing in that these musicians are pretentious looking and neutral about it all, so they kind of serve the big alien lifted's purpose here. But mostly they're just there to kind of add insult to injury, literally. So what I'm kind of rambling about here, and I realize that, and so I'm going to stop and clarify for a second. These, like I said, flourishes, long history of cartoon music, but all that usually happens off stage. So the music is key to making these gags work, but it's just something we accept as background. So what they're doing here is they're honoring the kind of wide range of music and skills that usually appear in these cartoons by making a joke out of it within the cartoon universe, and having these musicians who can do anything that is needed of them. And so they can immediately switch from being the more formal orchestra to a country hoedown like that. And so once that happens, it becomes all the funnier, because they don't understand his plight. Now we have kind of stereotypical country music to accompany this rather cruel moment. And it looks to the audience in the actual world like dancing. So it just masks the pain of the moment even more, and prevents Presto from getting more help. And so this all happens, and is kind of this really big moment that ends with an explosion, and Presto falling down in shock. So it's the final gag in this long sequence, an appropriate place to end the pattern, and I promise to end the video soon. Because it's hard to get crueler than electrocution, and the filmmakers are already testing the limits on Alec's likability. Because I can look in there and be like, well, before this and this and this, because we like bleh, but it's still pretty cruel. And so they have already They have also already used everything in sight in order to abuse Presto, and so they're kind of legitimately running out of ideas and time, and so it's time to move on to the climax. And so after this, Presto just kind of drops everything and runs after Alec, starting an elaborate chase scene, which kind of we only witness as Lumps running around behind the curtains. Kind of a very smart move on the filmmaker's part, because we've seen so much, we don't need to see this chase. And so it's simplified and shorter, and when we return, we get to see the climax. So now that we're there, I will talk about the climax in the next video, but let's take a break after all that activity, and think about where we're at in terms of our alignments and how this could change. How do we salvage an interesting, thoughtful relationship out of this kind of crazy situation? So take a break, and come on back.